Yo! Hello, everybody. Welcome to Pacific Bitcoin Swan Dome. This is the Open Source the World panel. I'm Nico Moran, host of Simply Bitcoin. And you know what? It's funny. Not too long ago, Senator Elizabeth Warren has been openly hostile towards Bitcoin for a minute now. Said that Bitcoiners are, quote, shadowy supercoders. Christine Lagarde, head of the European Central Bank, said that, quote, Bitcoin is a non-public money. What I believe they're actually doing is projecting onto us, better said, onto Bitcoin, what they know fiat currencies actually are. You have no idea what's going on under the hood. You have to take their word for it. You don't know what the monetary policy is. I don't know about you guys, but that sounds a lot more shadowy and non-public to me. Open source software, including Bitcoin, functions, it works in a completely opposite way. You don't have to trust a monetary authority. You don't have to trust the coder. You don't have to trust the government. You can verify that code yourself. And that is completely different from how it functions. This open monetary revolution would not be possible without it. And you know what? It scares the living daylights out of them because they know that fiat currencies will never be able to do that themselves. Welcome to Pacific Bitcoin. I want to welcome our awesome panelists. Everybody, please give a round of applause. So let's go from right to left. Why don't you guys introduce yourselves and what you guys are currently doing?
Hi, I'm Warren Togami from BlockStream, and I've been doing open source for well over a decade before Bitcoin. So from the early 2000s is when Linux and open source software went up against the entrenched billionaires that were abusing the market, and we defeated them with open source and leveling the playing field in a different way, and that's why I got into Bitcoin development like about 9 years ago.
Awesome. Moritz,
All right.
what's up, man?
I'm Moritz from Specter Wallet. We're one of the sort of first hardware desktop wallets which connected Bitcoin Core node to your hardware wallet, and very optimized for multisig. We recently joined Swan, and I'm very happy to be with my friend Keith here, who was an early contributor, and now what are you doing now these days, actually?
Hi, I'm Keith Mukai, open source developer. I am the lead developer of the Seed Signer open source hardware wallet, early contributor to Moritz's Specter desktop software wallet, and yeah.
All right, guys. So let's start with the basics. Moritz, why is open source software essential for the Bitcoin monetary revolution?
So open source software is basically a software which gets published and licensed with the right for the user and any developer or Bitcoiner in this sense, in Bitcoin, to really go and run the software, verify the software, change it, hack into it, and depending on the license, the most popular is MIT license in the Bitcoin space, and the freest, to say so, because you can to develop your own solution on top of it and then republish it as an open source or closed source. So it's very open and free. And in Bitcoin, we need it as Bitcoin is internet infrastructure for the communication of value, and the communication tool we need, as Robert Breedlove just said, to speak truth to power, that we really can go and check every line of code, be sure. And this expands also to the tools we build to make Bitcoin better. So the tools also should be open source and free open source software. And there are some nuances between free software and open source software, which probably Warren can explain in greater detail. But we don't have time for that on the panel here. So this is an essential aspect of Bitcoin that you can really go and don't trust verify.
Absolutely, and I think it's really important when that code that you're choosing to run is also the money that you're using, right? That transparency is essential. I'm going to pass it on to Warren. Warren, why is it important for individuals to use open source wallets when self-custodying their Bitcoin?
So as you've seen over and over again, when you hold your Bitcoin or dubious tokens in a custodial exchange, or if you use a wallet software, like, you don't know what you are actually running, or you're outright trusting someone else with your funds. And if the wallet you are using is open source, and further than that, there's build reproducibility and guarding against supply chain attack. There are people that are analyzing the open source wallets to help to detect if they actually are safe and they contain what they claim to contain. So one project to look up for that is walletscrutiny.com, I think. Yeah. If you are using open source for your own wallets, then you are more likely to keep yourself secure. But I would say that even that is not good enough, because the computers that you run the wallet software on are very often compromised by malware or viruses. And for that reason, you want to have additional hardware signing devices like what these guys built. Like BlockStream, like, we also built a hardware wallet solution. Well, there might be a few other brands at this conference even, and like, any of them will help you to better protect your Bitcoin with your open source wallet. We maybe could go more into that topic later.
So compared, and to go back to you, Warren, right? So compared to if someone was using a closed source software for their Bitcoin wallet, what would be the difference? What would be the cons of that?
So when you download software, say from the internet, you have no idea what that software contains. And it could contain a backdoor. Like, was it only a few months ago where several of the Solana end user wallets, all of those funds were stolen? And part of, no?
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, yeah. And part of the problem there is that a component that was common between a few of those wallets was actually closed source.
So it's not only hardware, and this is a question for Keith, right? Keith, I know that you contribute to Seed Signer, which in my opinion is one of the most important projects in the space, right? It's open source software in a sense, right? Could you talk a little bit about it, why it's important, and especially I believe it's very important in countries that are openly hostile towards Bitcoin, that perhaps it's not a good idea to order a cold card through the internet delivered to your home. So why don't you talk a little bit about Seed Signer and tell everybody the details?
Yeah, so the idea behind Seed Signer is that it's built on commercially available commodity hardware. So if you want to build a robot, you buy some Raspberry Pi parts and you build a robot. But a Seed Signer is based on the same Raspberry Pi boards. And so if you're in the Middle East and you're ordering a Raspberry Pi, your intrusive government has no idea that you're interested in transacting and interacting with Bitcoin. Whereas, yeah, if you try to order a Ledger, a Trezor, or a cold card and have it delivered to you, maybe the device gets to you, probably it doesn't, and then even worse, you're now on some government watch list as a potential dissident or someone who's not loyal to the government. And so the hardware is completely generic, and then the code itself is open source. So as they've been saying, anybody can inspect what it's doing. You don't have to trust any of the code. And then an additional element is, it's not just that you can inspect the code, like, this is a project run by people, right? Like, if I start making terrible decisions and I start adding horrible code into this project, the code is public. Somebody else can just say, you know what, I've had it. This guy Keith, he's terrible. And they take over, they clone the project, and they make their own changes. They rip out any of my bad decisions, and then they slowly convince people, hey, you know what? This new version of it, that's the better way to go. It's the cleaner version. Keith was great at one point, but he's gone rogue. He's terrible. Forget this guy. They kick me to the curb. Like, there's no lock-in, right? That's the beauty of open source. You don't have to keep trusting me over time.
Absolutely. So this question for Moritz, and I would love to get your guys' perspective. Recently, in the last 6 months, the U.S. Treasury, for the first time in its history, specifically the Office of Foreign Asset Control, censored open source software. Specifically, these sanctions were meant for individuals and governments. I believe that sanction is trying to set a precedent. Does that, as an open source developer, contributor, did that worry you at all? And this sanction specifically, it was against Tornado Cash, actually led to the arrest of an open source developer, which is the craziest part. They arrested a developer for writing code. No arms, no drugs, no nothing. They arrested him because he wrote a piece of neutral code. I believe they're trying to set a precedent, and they're going to use this possibly to go after Bitcoin in the future, as Bitcoin is a threat to current U.S. sanction policy. So, Moritz, what are your thoughts on that?
It's pretty worrying because we don't see any real learning curve on their side. We have been through all the crypto wars when in the 90s certain cryptography was declared munitions and you couldn't travel outside the country with these informations. And there was I think Adam Beck, your CEO from BlockStream, he led the battle there. And we have like this push to have like the government to have master keys in our messaging apps and stuff like this. So it's a bit worrying because like Bitcoin, like we'd always talk about money, but it's actually a communications technology. And when people start going in there and telling people what to do with their who are just writing code and expressing speech to say so, it's very worrying. And I mean, the developer was arrested in the Netherlands, and the development in Europe is very worrying. There, we had earlier this year a situation. They came out and wanted to ban proof of work all of a sudden, which came like on the last last meters of this new regulation. There, they wanted to ban unhosted wallet, which is basically self-hosted wallets, because it would be hosted in their terms when it's on a centralized exchange, custodial exchange. So it's quite worrying. But yeah, I mean, I think Akin Fernandez from Beauty On from Azteco says it's the best. I think we need a Supreme Court case there, which actually makes clear that Bitcoin is free speech, and if you run your own tools, that you can protect your financial privacy. It's an important right for you to exercise.
100%. And what I believe, is behind all this is the separation of money and state, and Bitcoin is a threat to that, right? It's a threat to their monopoly on the creation of money. Because I think this is such an important topic, I want to get all your guys' thoughts on that. So Keith, what are your thoughts on, and just to be clear, guys, Tornado Cash is not a Bitcoin software, but it is open source software. So it's just a matter of time before, I believe, they set their crosshairs, better said, on Bitcoin. So Keith, what are your thoughts on this, man?
I mean, it definitely has a chilling effect. And I feel safe working on Bitcoin, storage, multi-sig, transactions, all of that. But if I were to venture off into areas like Tornado Cash as an open source developer, I would create a NIM account. Like I'm doxxed. I'm Keith Mukai. My Twitter account is @KeithMukai. Here's my face, right? I'm not hiding anything. But I wouldn't be this public if I was working on anything beyond just custody. But then at the same time, in the U.S., I think we have so far. I think we have better protections. And I've kind of wondered, if I was hauled in front of a court for writing open source code, okay, what if I wore a suit that had the code on the back of the jacket. And that's how I appeared in court and took, my oath when I testified. And there's, court photographers taking a picture of me, swearing my oath in my jacket that has my code printed on the back. As an American citizen, I should be able to do that, right? So I'm not sure how far that sort of a case would go in the U.S.
I agree, and Coin Center has a lawsuit against the Treasury. Let's see where this goes, because you're right. It is code. Code is free speech, right, which is specifically protected by the First Amendment. Warren, same question. Does it have you concerned? Obviously, does it have you troubled?
Well, I have to agree with Keith that the protections of free speech are a lot stronger in the U.S. And we don't actually know the details of the charges filed against that developer. Was that in the Netherlands? Yeah. But going back to Adam Back, when he made a T-shirt containing the munitions of crypto code that was like a few lines of Perl to make a point that code is speech. America would have to fall quite a long distance to get away from that. So I'm less worried about that, but I think that a reason for developers who work on that type of software to use pseudonyms is not only to protect themselves from the government. I think actually the bigger threat is random other people. Yeah, it's about time for the next topic.
I agree. Okay, so Moritz, being an Bitcoin educator myself over the last 6 years, one of the things that troubled me the most is that, unfortunately, I guess it's human nature, human beings most of the time would pick convenience out of security sometimes. So the trick is, what I've figured out is you have to make the security so easy, right, so effortless, behind a nice UI, that people just do it, at a click of a button. And that's what made me so excited when I heard Specter and Swan teaming up together. What has you excited about this future? Because the way that I see it, and of course I'm just an onlooker, is I think you guys are going to make it very easy for a lot of people to take self-custody, potentially multi-sig self-custody, without them even realizing they're jumping through those hoops.
I'm very excited about the partnership and us joining the Swan team, and we're certainly, I just got some lovely critique from Keith, who told me your user interface and everything was great in 2020, but it's 2022, so it's really time for a step up our game, and I'm very excited to work with all the folks at Swan there. And then it's I still believe that the Bitcoiner, a person who wants to self-custody Bitcoin, you have to come up to a certain level of education where you have a little bit of understanding what you're doing. You can't be oh, just click this button and it's done for you. So we will make it significantly easier. We do our best for providing great education and make it as easy as possible. But it's sort of a learning curve that people are coming some steps towards us also. And if you have asked yourself, oh, it's too inconvenient, I can give you a demo later at my booth there. Come over, you get some free sats. I don't know how many I have, but I'll try to probably run out quite quickly. But so come over, I give you a demo. And if you ask yourself if you should do self-custody or not, a lot of people were FTX'd last week, and it's just it's just Mount Gox on steroids. What can I say? And and sometimes I have to pinch myself. You do all the effort. He's doing his effort. There's hundreds of other developers doing the efforts to make this as easy as possible. It comes down to writing down 12 words and keeping this as a secret. And and people still run to these exchanges and keep millions of dollars there because it's so convenient. So we need you, Americans especially, to get a little bit away from the convenience, a little bit, and the hand on the code. And then we need the Americans especially to save our butt on free speech, especially me as a European. So we're counting on you guys.
Absolutely, and you hit the nail on the head. This peaceful monetary revolution is not possible without individuals taking personal responsibility over their wealth and taking their Bitcoin into self-custody. So I think you hit the nail on the head. Guys, I want to use the last 3 minutes, and feel free to jump in. LND, a Lightning implementation, was broken not once but twice, and by the same developer, I might add, in the last 3 weeks. So I don't want to put any of you guys on the spot, but feel free to jump in on what your thoughts are on that. Warren?
So BlockStream makes like one of the other Lightning implementations, CLN. But I think that all of us can agree that responsible disclosure is what you want, especially when there's software that is so important that is relied upon by many, many users. And it would be preferable to not publicly break it and to try to shame people, and to instead like inform them privately and to give them a chance to fix it, and for people to deploy a fix before people are affected by this. Luckily, in this situation, the attacker's goal was not to cause people to lose money. It was more to make a political statement or something. So as far as I know, no money was lost in this case, but we as a industry could be less lucky in the future if the attacker actually had ill intent. So I need to reinforce the importance of responsible disclosure.
Keith, we have about a minute left. You want to add to that?
I mean, we want people to be looking through the code, finding flaws, uncovering failure conditions, so that we can avoid worst case scenarios. But I think when you find it, you should not then trigger the worst case scenario, right? Like that just doesn't make sense, right? And like we all have egos. We all kind of want to build our notoriety. It's a badass thing to do, to break shit. But yeah, it seemed irresponsible to me.
Awesome. All right, guys, that was the panel. Please give a round of applause to these awesome developers. These individuals are who make this peaceful revolution possible. They're contributors to open source software. They're contributors to the wallets that you choose to keep your generational wealth in. And I can't thank these awesome gentlemen enough. Thank you, guys.